Good morning, sir. Coming to introduction, antibiotics are the most common drugs used in NICU, but only small number of cases will be having culture-proven infection. So around 98% of the preterm infants treated with empirical antibiotics are culture negative. So the what is empirical antibiotics is the antibiotics started before culture sensitivity report in fear of getting the early onset sepsis. So what is rational use of medicines is correct, proper and appropriate use of medicines. So what are the effects of antibiotics on the neonates? So the newborn infants will be having sterile gut. The normal flora like bifidobacterium and bacteroids, they seen only in early days of life. As early bifidobacterium are seen as early as second day of life. So these antibiotics delay in microflora colonization mainly bifidobacterium and lactobacillus. The normal gut development, it is dependent on the normal flora of the gut. So the gut flora have a role in physiological and immunodevelopment of the gut, and they create a physical defense and role in immune responses. The Bacteroides fragilis, they provide a cellular and physical maturation of the gut, and Bifidobacterium, they mainly provide immunomodulation in the gut and the balance between pro and anti-inflammatory cytokine production. The sepsis occurring within 72 hours of life is called as early onset sepsis. It is usually vertical transmission from mother to the baby in an antenatal period, and sepsis occurring beyond 72 hours of life is called as late onset sepsis, which is usually horizontal or horizontal in transmission, mainly from environment or by caregiver. So the pattern of pathogen for neonatal sepsis has changed with the time and varies from place to place. The most infants admitted to NICU receive empirical antibiotics. The incidence of culture proven early onset sepsis is around 1 to 4.6 per thousand live births. So the common pathogens encountered in day-to-day life is in developed countries, the early onset sepsis is mainly because of group B streptococci, E. coli, and coagulase negative staph. Late onset sepsis, around 70% of the cases because of the gram-positive pathogens like coagulase negative staph aureus, enterococci, and group B streptococci. Around 18 to 20% because of the gram-negative pathogens like Enterobacter and E. coli, and around 12% of the late onset sepsis are because of fungal infection, that is Candida. But in developing countries, the early onset sepsis is mainly because of E. coli, Klebsiella pneumonia, or Staph aureus, and late onset sepsis is because of Staph aureus, Streptococcus pneumonia, and Pyrogenous. Coming to India, in India, Klebsiella pneumonia, Staph aureus, and E. coli are the main, most common organisms causing neonatal sepsis, both in hospital and community-acquired sepsis. Coming to our Indira Gandhi Hospital, the Klebsiella pneumonia and Acinetobacter are most common pathogens encountered. So the causative organisms in early onset sepsis and late onset sepsis are similar in a hospital setting in developing countries like India. Coming to NICE guidelines on an early neonatal infection. So how to counter the early onset sepsis in a neonatal infection. So NICE guidelines are National Institute for Healthcare Excellence. They they have formed risk factors and clinical parameters. So the risk factors for infections are like pre-labor rupture of membranes, preterm birth that is less than 30 weeks with especially with the pre-labor rupture of membranes, and confirmed or suspected chorioamnionitis, invasive group B streptococci infection in a previous baby, and antibiotic treatment given to mother for confirmed or suspected invasive bacterial infection 24 hours before, during, or after the labor. And the clinical indicators suggestive of infection are like altered behavior, altered responsiveness or muscle tone, feeding difficulties, feed intolerance, altered heart rate, respiratory distress, oxygen desaturation, apnea, signs of perinatal asphyxia or hypoxic ischemia, seizures, need for mechanical ventilation in a term baby, temperature abnormalities which is not explained by the environment, and signs of shock, unexplained bleeding disorder, oliguria, hyperglycemia, metabolic acidosis, local sense of infection, and confirmed or suspected sepsis in a co-twin. So the lines which are marked in red are the red flag signs, like antibiotic treatment given to mother during or after the labor, respiratory distress, seizures, mechanical ventilation in a term baby, signs of shock, and confirmed or suspected sepsis in a co-twin. So coming to action plan. So if no risk factors or no critical clinical indicators for a sepsis and no lab evidence of possible infection, then we advise no antibiotics and continue routine postnatal care. In case of any red flag sign or two or more risk factors, investigations should be sent and start antibiotics, empirical antibiotics. So the treatment plan, if there are no red flag signs with only one risk factor or one clinical indicator, then baby is observed for 12 hours. If in this 12 hours there is a clinical concern of the infection or the sepsis, then investigation should be sent and start empirical antibiotics. Or if there are no clinical concern, then reassure the family and discharge the baby. In case if any red flag signs are present or no red flag signs but two or more risk factors, then again investigation should be sent along with the blood culture and start antibiotics. So coming to role of inflammatory markers in a neonatal sepsis, C-reactive protein is an excellent marker for established neonatal bacterial infections, but it is not useful for early diagnosis, which is elevated only in 35 to 65% of the cases at the onset of infection. So the serial values, that is 24 to 48 hours after the onset of symptoms, has an improved sensitivity and specificity. Two consecutive CRP levels less than 10 milligram per liter 24 hours apart has a negative predictive value for the sepsis at around 99%. The one more inflammatory marker is a procalcitonin. The after birth the procalcitonin levels increases and which reach peak at 24 hours and decreases gradually by 48 hours. So the during first 72 hours procalcitonin levels on newborns suffering from early sepsis are significantly higher than non-infected newborns when reference ranges by hours of age are used, that is normograms. So the normal procalcitonin level is less than 0.05 nanogram per ml. So if it is less than 0.05 nanogram per ml, so you suspect localized infections. Between 0.15 to less than 2, there is a possible systemic bacterial infection. If it is between 2 to less than 10 nanogram per milliliter, so there is a systemic bacterial infection, and if it is more than 10 nanogram per milliliter, then you can suspect a severe bacterial sepsis or septic shock. So the early cord blood sample for the procalcitonin has an increased diagnostic accuracy, and it has an intermediate to early rising inflammatory marker. With a successful antibiotic therapy, procalcitonin levels should fall with a half-life to 24 to 35 hours. So these inflammatory markers along along with the WBC and other inflammatory markers has a good prognostic value. So the other inflammatory markers are used in neonatal sepsis are like cytokines interleukin 6 and 8, which rise within 2 to 4 hours of sepsis and levels peaking at 6 to 8 hours. So the imbalance in a pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory markers, that is IL-6 and IL-8 ratio more than 3.5, are found to be more sensitive compared to CRP level more than 10 milligram per liter. The increased expression of CD64 can be detected within 1 to 6 hours of bacterial infection. So the improved diagnostic accuracy in terms of infants. Yes, STREM1, it is a one more anti-inflammatory marker, has been identified as a potential biomarker for neonatal sepsis with a sensitivity of 70 to 100% and specificity 71 to 100%. So, and serum amyloid A, Perceptin, PCR-based technologies, all these techniques are under trial. Coming to choice of antibiotics, in developed countries where group B streptococci, E. coli are the predominant pathogens, the ampicillin and gentamicin are the first choice of empirical treatment in case of early onset sepsis. In developing countries, the empirical antibiotic therapy should be individualized based on a hospital or a region. Coming to duration of antibiotics in early onset sepsis, they consider stopping after 36 hours if initial clinical suspicion of infection was not strong and CRP less than 10 milligram per liter or blood culture sensitivity negative and baby is well, no clinical signs of sepsis, then you can stop the antibiotics treatment after 36 hours. Treat for 5 days if there is a continued clinical concern of infection at 36 hours and CRP level more than 10 mg per liter and with positive blood culture. And if continue antibiotics if baby did not recover fully even after 5 days of treatment. Coming to late onset sepsis, coagulation negative staph, it is a most common pathogen in late onset sepsis followed by Staph aureus, Enterococcus and group B streptococci. So the gram negative organisms account for around 18 to 20% of the cases like E. coli in late onset sepsis. The antimicrobial therapy in both gram positive and gram negative organisms, the preferred antibiotics are cloxacillin and gentamicin. In developing countries, the gram-negative bacteria like Klebsiella pneumonia, E. coli, Pseudomonas are the most common pathogens and which have greater antimicrobial resistance. Around 70% may not be covered by empirical treatment of ampicillin and gentamicin. So, high proportion of MRSA strains also most common in developing countries. So, vancomycin or and third generation cephalosporins like cefotaxime is commonly preferred in case of developing countries. The duration of antibiotic therapy in late onset sepsis is 48 to 72 hours pending culture results for suspected neonatal sepsis. Symptomatic baby can have a false negative blood culture sensitivity if antibiotics are given prenatally to mother or a blood sample collected improperly. So, if the blood culture sensitivity negative but the baby is symptomatic, continue antibiotics. In case of proven bacterial sepsis without meningitis, treat the child for 10 to 14 days in case of blood culture positive cases. In selected situations like neonates more than 32 weeks of gestation, weighing more than 1500 grams, the neonate is asymptomatic within 5 days of antibiotic therapy, you can consider for stopping antibiotics at 7 to 10 days with proper follow-up. Coming to antimicrobial choice and duration of therapy for a neonatal meningitis cases, the decision is based on activity against causative pathogens and relative penetration into the CSF in presence of meningeal inflammation. The early onset sepsis with meningitis usually commonly used drugs are ampicillin with aminoglycoside or cefotaxime. The initial empirical therapy to cover group E streptococci, E. coli, and Listeria monocytogenes and Klebsiella species. The late onset meningitis, anti-staph antibiotics like nafcillin or vancomycin along with cefotaxime or ceftazidime with or without aminoglycoside is recommended for 14 to 21 days. In uncomplicated neonatal meningitis caused by gram-negative bacteria, the antibiotic should be given for a minimum of 21 days. Failure to achieve CSF sterilization or persistence of symptoms, look for brain abscess, ventriculitis, or subdural empyema. In case when there is an intracranial abscess, combination of a surgical aspiration or drainage along with continued antimicrobial therapy for 4 to 6 weeks. Steroids, the use of steroids like dexamethasone, there is insufficient data for the use in case of bacterial meningitis. And repeat lumbar puncture to document CSF sterilization and improvement of CSF parameters is not recommended routinely. It should be done in a neonates who have not responded clinically after 48 hours of antimicrobial therapy. So in case of neonatal meningitis, usually we give the antimicrobials for 21 days. When we should consider prophylactic antibiotics in case of umbilical access, central venous catheterization, when the child is on mechanical ventilation, a prophylactic antibiotics should be given. So antibiotic prophylaxis in a surgical neonate. So there is no fixed protocol for the prophylaxis of antibiotics in surgical neonates. There are few studies based on US and UK studies. The one study, which is a standardized guideline for antibiotic prophylaxis in surgical neonates taken from Seminar of Pediatric Surgery, they recommend for clean cases like bronchoscopy, circumcision, inguinal hernia repair, testicular torsion, ovarian torsion, gastroschisis, and omphalocele. They don't recommend any antibiotics. For clean contaminated cases like biliary tract or colorectal cyst, diaphragmatic hernia repair, duodenal atresia, gastrostomy, fundoplication, liver biopsy, and head and neck surgeries, they recommend 1 dose of cefazolin before surgery. And for contaminated cases like Hirschsprung's disease pull-through, ostomic ulcer, PSRP, jejunal and ileal atresia, they recommend cefazolin or with flagyl or piperacillin tazobactam or cefoxitin for 1 to 2 days. There is one more study, recent study based on the UK. They recommend no antibiotics for clean cases, and for clean contaminated and contaminated cases, they prefer two antibiotics like flucloxacillin and gentamicin. When there is a known MRSA, they prefer vancomycin along with cefotaxime. For dirty cases, they advise triple antibiotics like flucloxacillin, gentamicin with metrozil. If there is a known MRSA, they prefer along with the vancomycin and cefotaxime, they add metrozil. So they recommend to add fluconazole in case of severe NEC or in case of intestinal perforation. So when we do give prophylactic antifungal agents, so based on Joint Trust guidelines, the antifungal prophylaxis should be recommended in case of neonates weighing less than 750 grams birth weight and gestation age less than 27 weeks, and preterm babies with NEC in first 4 weeks, or abdominal surgery with a percutaneous long line on a parenteral nutrition. And antifungal prophylaxis should be considered in case a preterm infant colonized with a candida with a high risk factors like ET tube in situ for more than 1 week, more than 2 courses of antibiotics used for more than 5 days of duration, and babies received postnatal steroids. So the prophylaxis regime is fluconazole should be given at a 3 mg per kg per dose intravenous every 72 hours maximum for a 6 weeks, and reduce the dose interval to every 48 hours after 2 weeks. In case of proven fungal infection, fungal sepsis, while on prophylaxis, stop fluconazole prophylaxis and start amphotericin B as a first line antifungal. The duration should be given for 5 days or until the culture sensitivity comes negative. Once the culture sensitivity comes negative, continue amphotericin B for 14 days. So coming to next topic, that is antibiotic resistance. The antibiotic resistance is a public health crisis. The prevalence is higher in case of ICU setups compared to neonatal ICUs. The infants admitted in NICUs are at risk of colonization and infections by antibiotic resistant organisms. So the antibiotic resistant colonization can progress to infection and as a reservoir for antibiotic resistant organisms. The MRSA is a critical important pathogen in NICU setups associated with endemic and epidemic infections. The gram-negative bacilli, which are common in developing countries, becoming increasingly antibiotic resistant and in most of the cases pan resistant also. So the mechanism of action and mechanism of resistance. The mechanism of action of antibacterial and antifungal agents are the antibacterial agents bind to bacterial cell targets and prevent transcription, translation, or they interfere with cell wall synthesis. The antifungal agents like amphotericin B binds to ergosterol in fungal membranes and they cause leakage of the fungal cell contents. And azoles like fluconazole, they inhibit enzymes involved in ergosterol synthesis. So the mechanism of resistance for both bacteria and yeast are by acquisition of an enzyme that alters the structure of antibiotic, rendering the agent unable to bind to the target, or where there is a mutation in the bacterial target site, or there is a change in the uptake via multi-drug efflux pumps which remove the antibiotic from the microorganisms, or there is a porins which prevent antibiotic entry into the bacterial cells. So what is the clinical impact of antimicrobial resistant pathogens? So the mortality and morbidity of antibiotic resistant organisms, there is an increased virulence, difficult to detect the sepsis, delay in appropriate therapy, along with fewer treatment options in case of antibiotic resistance, more expensive drugs, more toxic compared to conventional therapy, and vicious cycle of antibiotic overuse and resistance. So how to prevent antibiotic resistance is by judicious use of antibiotics and infection control strategies. So the judicious use of antibiotics, we have to see for antibiotic microbial stewardship, that is ATAS, that is a right drug is used for a right duration at a right dose and a right reason, that is de-escalation of pathogen directed antibiotics should be used, and with a right route, a right resident should give the antibiotic with a proper documentation, and you have to see for the right response of the antibiotic. So the second strategies is the infection control strategies. You have to educate the frontline staff, identification of the antibiotic resistant pathogens, surveillance for antimicrobial antimicrobial resistant pathogens, and develop electronic surveillance, track and trend resistant patterns, containment of antibiotic resistant organisms by hand hygiene by the staff and the families, initiation of a contact precautions, that is staff done gown and gloves, and environmental cleaning in NICU setups. So the eradication of potential reservoirs with the resistant pathogens via topical antibiotics and topical disinfectants, prevention of a progression from colonization to infection, and implementation of a evidence-based practices for insertion and maintenance of central lines and daily assessment of the central lines and remove the central lines when no longer required. So, what are the complications of antibiotic use in neonates? So, when we use the broad spectrum antibiotics like cephalosporins, there are chances of subsequent mortality, NEC, non-cons infections, and fungal infections. And there are chances of resistance to antibiotics. Few studies have told when there is a more antibiotic exposure in a neonatal period, the higher BMI in a boys in the future. And anaerobic medications in early years, not only limited to neonatal exposure, there are chances of subsequent inflammatory bowel disease and celiac diseases. There are few studies which shows the antibiotic use in a neonatal period has shown the immune related diseases like asthma in a future, and few animal models have showed the type 1 diabetes, and neutrophil depleted environment after antibiotics causes late onset sepsis, and few antibiotics like aminoglycosides, acyclovir, amphotericin B, ACE inhibitors, NSAIDs cause nephrotoxicity, and few antibiotics like aminoglycosides or glycopeptide antibiotics cause ototoxicity and fungal infections. So summary, the choice of antibiotics should be based on the causative organisms and patterns of antibiotic susceptibility. For early onset sepsis, in a developed countries, commonly used drugs are ampicillin and gentamicin. For late onset sepsis, when a neonate is stable, cloxacillin and gentamicin are preferred. When child is sick, neonate is sick with a cardiorespiratory compromise and areas where MRSA is prevalent, vancomycin and cefotaxime are preferred drugs. For a developing nations, the antibiotic therapy should be based on local prevalence. Coming to our Indira Gandhi NICU protocols, the first line antibiotic in a preterm neonate who is symptomatic, mother with a risk factor for sepsis. So here the child is symptomatic with the mother is having risk factors. The most commonly used drugs are amikacin and ofloxacin. So the empirical treatment is given for 48 hours if there is a risk factor, and if there is a septic screen positive, then continue antibiotics for 5 days, and if the blood culture is positive, then continue antibiotic for 14 days. So when the child is asymptomatic and the mother with a risk factor for sepsis or the unknown history with a asymptomatic neonate, the only antibiotic used is amikacin. So there is a positive risk factor, so continue antibiotic for 48 hours. If sepsis screen positive, then continue for 5 days, and 14 days if it is blood culture positive. When the term baby comes with a history of chorioamnionitis, again the empirical treatment is same, that is amikacin and ofloxacin, and the duration is again same for positive risk factors 48 hours, septic screen 5 days, and culture positive 14 days. The term baby with risk factors for sepsis without chorioamnionitis, so the septic screen should be sent at 12 hours of life. Antibiotics if sepsis screen is positive and if signs of symptoms are attributable to sepsis. So here we wait for 12 hours and see for the see the child and the risk factors. If any concern is there, then we have to start the antibiotic for 5 days, and blood culture if it is positive, then continue antibiotics for 14 days based on the culture sensitivity. So the neonate presenting with the home or community with the sepsis, we start augmentin and amikacin, and if the neonate presenting with the diarrhea, we start ofloxacin and amikacin. In case of septic arthritis, the preferred drugs are piptas and amikacin for 4 to 6 weeks. In case of meningitis, preferred drugs are meropenem and amikacin for 21 days. And in case of urinary tract infections, the same empirical treatment, oflox and amikacin given, followed by piptas for the duration of 7 to 10 days. Thank you, sir.
Just a few things. Just wanted to ask you. In the beginning, you talked about sepsis markers. At the outset, Vinay, it was a brilliant presentation. It is very, very, what do you call, comprehensive, and you made a sincere effort. I can see that. Congrats.
Yes,
Congrats. However, my only question is: in the beginning, you talked about the sepsis markers. Okay,
yes, sir.
so that you suggested.
Yes, sir.
How many of them are practical? How many of them are available in the country, and how many of them are being done in the institute?
Sir, we are doing CRP and procalcitonin regularly in our setup, sir.
Okay.
Recently, these IL-6 are being done outside. I think even our setup also they are planning to start, sir.
Okay.
6, sir.
Them you said about 70 to 80% or 90% this thing sensitivity.
Yes, sir.
Available, it will be great. That's why.
They are still in trial, sir.
Okay.
Like STREM1 and serum amyloid A, Pisepsin, they are still in trial, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
It's open for discussion. Murli, in case you want to add something about what is the practicalities of whatever he suggested, because theoretically I think he covered everything.
Sir, practically, yeah, I think most centers antibiotics are being abused rather than being used, and I think even our center is not an exception to that. So even before whatever sepsis markers he has mentioned, so
Yes.
even before they're available, empirical antibiotics are being used, but I have seen many instances wherein a lot of antibiotics were being abused. I mean, either for extended duration or improper dosage being given, or even when there is no indication. For example, our own surgical neonates who are ready to be discharged, so they're just being kept in the ward just to give antibiotics, without having any rationale. So that is one point I wanted to highlight here. And as I said, sepsis markers, IL-6 is being done routinely at many centers outside.
Okay.
In India, it's commonly available, sir. IL-6 is being done.
Yes. One other thing which caught my attention, Murli, is that he said he has classified gastroschisis and exam as clean surgery. Somehow, and antibiotics are not needed. Somehow, I'm not comfortable with that concept, because I feel even though theoretically it is a clean case, but still there is going to be a possibility of colonization of the either the examphilous membrane or the gastroschisis. So, is it a hospital department policy not to give antibiotics for these cases?
Sir, I feel probably these guidelines are formulated by the West, wherein they have the practice of routine in-house delivery for these cases, and probably the neonates are not transferred like how we encounter. I mean, they travel a long distance before they land up in our hospital. So, in-house deliveries and not much of exposure. Probably they must have classified them as a clean case. But yes, in the back of the mind, I still can't believe how it can be a clean case, because bowel is being handled. Maybe omphalocele with the rupture, I mean the membranes intact, we can still consider that. But gastroschisis, I'm not convinced with that, sir.
Same thing. No. My question is, even if examphilous sac is covered,
yes, sir.
But it is likely to be colonized. In theatre you take, there's no way you can completely sterilize it. So there is, I would still consider as a clean contaminated than a clean case. I mean, I don't know.
Yes, sir. So maybe in-house delivery and immediate intervention, maybe that could be one point behind that.
Yes, agree.
That could be the only.
Agreed. Ramchandra sir, and I can see Raju Sauji there and lots of other people. Sir, any suggestions, questions, comments?
Yeah, if I can ask, I'm audible?
Please.
Regarding same omphalocele, which is well covered, the role of otherwise maybe very simple. Is there a role for local antibiotic cream or solutions which is better than IV? Because it's not a very vascular area. So hematogenous spread from there will be less likely. So of local antibiotics
Hello, sir.
or